Hi friends, Mindy here. I have a process video for you today. This is day 5 of Facing Fear from Bythewell4God. I am going to be working in both my little pocket journaling Bible here and my journal that I made. I have process videos for both of those. I'm just showing you here kind of in my journal. There's a lot of scripture in here that I actually want to include, and so I'm taking advantage of the way that this journal happens to be for this day, where I have this kind of chunk of this craft paper that has like a dot grid on it, and so I can use that to write out quite a bit of scripture. But first, I'm going to create a little page in my little pocket Bible before I get into that. So I'm kind of working both because this little Bible, I'm actually going to fill up with scriptures about fear, and then I'm going to actually give this away to somebody. So I just am kind of keeping these more general here. And so what I'm going to do, because the story that we're talking about today is in Daniel, it's the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, but there's also a reference to a psalm. And this Bible, this little pocket Bible, is only the New Testament and Psalms and Proverbs. So I'm going to use the verse that is in Psalms, and that's where I'm going to be doing my journaling today. And I can see I've pulled out my little craft iron here. When I did the binding for the journal that I made, I created some fabric that had like heat and bond on the back of it. And so I had some pieces of that left over, and I saved those so that I can use them again. I save, when I'm working in a journal like this, I save all my scraps until the very end to see what I can use. And so this stuff that still has that that adhesive on there, I'm going to go ahead and take advantage of that, and I'm going to use one of these little pieces here to put on the bottom of this card. These little journaling cards come with the kit when you buy the Pocket Journaling Bible Kit from Bythewell4God. It comes with stickers and journaling cards that are like pre-cut to be the perfect size for this Bible. So I'm just using one of those for the background, and then I'm incorporating this fabric that coordinates with the kit. So I'm just ironing. It just takes a couple of seconds. I just ironed the area. You can see I'm working on some cardboard here just in case some of that adhesive goes off the edge, and then I'm just going to cut that fabric, that excess fabric off. So I'm just kind of putting my little craft iron off to the side. You can do that with a regular iron too, just make sure it doesn't have steam on it. And then, like I said, I save all my little scraps and stuff. So then I'm just going to cut off the excess, and then off camera I will go and write out the verses. There's actually a few of them that I want to include here on the back of this card, and then I'll do a little bit highlight the verse in the Bible, and then put a little sticker in there, and that'll pretty much be everything for this card. I'm just going to ink up the edges here with some archival ink in ground espresso. And so, like I mentioned, we're talking today about the 3 Hebrew children, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and I kind of want to talk about this story just a little bit while you're watching me kind of do this. There's really nothing super special that I'm doing to this card or anything. I'm just basically going to staple everything down, so all of that will be kind of self-explanatory, but we're talking about kind of facing fear. But this story about is really kind of significant, and so I just kind of want to talk about that today instead of really going through too much of what I'm actually doing, because you've seen me do it before, I guess. So there's really nothing new in terms of technique or anything. So, but in Daniel, like before this situation actually happens, Nebuchadnezzar has a dream, and Daniel is called upon to interpret this dream, and he does. And so out of the interpretation of that dream, Nebuchadnezzar feels like he needs to create this golden statue. And everybody, we know this story that we've heard as kids, and even, and so he makes this image of gold and commands that everybody bow down and worship this statue. And it's so interesting to me that in this time period, Nebuchadnezzar relies on his own magicians and whatever to interpret this dream, and he can't. And they find Daniel, and Daniel interprets the dream, and he even at some point like recognizes that that God is the one that gave Daniel the interpretation to this dream. And then he turns around and he commands that everybody bow down to this statue. And then he gets mad when, when 3 of them won't do it, which is just kind of funny to me. So, moving forward in the story, they come to this statue. They were basically turned in to Nebuchadnezzar for not bowing down. And so we get the story in Daniel 3, and starting at 16, it says that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. And I just think it's so interesting here, because I love how I'm reading from the King James Version, and it says, we're not careful to answer thee in this matter. They had no concerns going into this situation. They were not hesitant. When it says that we're not careful, it doesn't mean that it means we have an answer for you right now. Their faith, they believed that God would either deliver them, or that whatever happened to them was fine, and they were still not going to bow down regardless of the situation. And so I just want to continue reading on through here. And it said that then we go into that Nebuchadnezzar was full of fury, and he commanded that the furnace be heated 7 times hotter than it was normally. And he commanded the most mighty men that were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men that were bound in their coats and their hats and their other garments were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, because the king's commandment was urgent, and the furnace exceeding hot, and the flame of the fire slew these men that took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down, bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. And Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished, basically, and rose up in haste and spake and said to his counselors, Did we not cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said unto the king, True, O king. And he answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt, and the form of the 4th is like the Son of God. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the mouth of the burning fiery furnace, and spake and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, ye servants of the Most High God, come forth and come hither. And then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came forth out of the midst of the fire. And the princes, governors, captains, and king's counselors, being gathered together, saw these men, upon whose bodies the fire had no power, nor was an hair of their head singed, neither were their coats changed, nor the smell of fire had passed on them. And then Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants that trusted in him, and have changed the king's word, and yielded their bodies that they might not serve nor worship any god except their own. And then, of course, after this point, he made a decree that nothing was to happen to them. But it's one of the things that I think it is important to take away from this story is obviously that, that God can deliver us from anything, and we have to be willing to face things. And, even in the future, we don't really know what's coming down the road. But the fact of the matter is, sometimes we have to face the fire, and sometimes we have to walk around in it for a little bit. But when we do, we're not alone in that. God is with us, and the closer that we stay to God, the less those flames can impact us. The only thing that was burned in that whole situation was the things that kept them bound. It was only their ties. They were walking around free after that. They didn't even smell of fire. And if you've been around fire, it lingers, right? But they didn't even smell of fire, because the only thing that was damaged was the thing that kept them bound. And it wasn't even so much, God could have come in and he could have stepped in at any time in this situation. He could have caused it so they would never even thrown into the fire, but they had to be. They walked around in that fire for a little while. The king called them out, and then all of those people, the princes, the governors, the captains, the king counselors, they all saw that happen. They were all witness to what happened. It wasn't just a story that got passed down. Sometimes we have to go through things sometimes it's to purify us. The Bible talks about fire as a means of purification. But in this instance, they went through fire, and it was a witness to these people. And it created, it caused the king to change his command. And then it goes on, and at the very end, it says that there is no other God that can deliver after this sort. So even, a Babylonian king saw that there was something different about their God. And I think that's so important. And that's, sometimes we go through things to be a witness to other people. And there's so much within this story and, different things that happened in this, the time of Daniel. I would encourage you to go just read the whole thing, because it really is encouraging if you think about it. So anyway, that was just one of those things. Like, sometimes we have to go through things, and sometimes we face fire and we face tribulation and we have trials, and we don't know how that it's going to turn out, but we have to be committed before we get to those things. We have to have our mind made up that no matter what, how we behave is not going to change. We are going to continue to serve our God and not, cower in the face of an idol or even a king. We may never stand before a king and have to claim something like that, but that doesn't mean that people aren't still watching our lives. And so we still have to be able to live and proclaim what we believe, regardless of the circumstances around us. And so I know I don't normally say too much about the actual, scriptures. I talk more about the artwork, but I just really wanted to read all this, and that, like, a lot of this story is what I have included in the writing in this journal here. Like I said, there was a good bit of scripture that I wanted to include, mainly that kind of interaction and, the fact that they weren't burned and all of those things. And so I included that in the dot grade paper that's kind of in the middle. And then on the back side, I used one of the labels, and I wanted to record that part that says, because there is no other God that can deliver after this sort. Even Nebuchadnezzar recognized that no other God can do what God can do. And so you can see here, I just created a little pocket on this back side, and I am adding one of the flashcards that had one of the words. I'm just stapling some fabric on here. And then off camera, I added some notes on a little tag, and you can see that in the close-up pictures. And so I'm just going to show here the little Bible entry that I made, and then also, these are the pages. I did some other things off camera, but you can see that in the close-up pictures at the end. So if you like this video, I would really appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And until next time, bye.